Hello there, Last Dart TV, Alex Mack speaking. What we're going to be talking today Hey, how are you doing? Last Dart TV, Alex Mack here. Thanks for watching. What we're going to be talking today about today, for fuck's sake. Hey, how you doing? Last Dart TV, Alex Mack speaking. Thanks for watching. So what we're going to be talking about today are what I call darting scoring zones. I've already made a video called 4 darts, which is the fourth dart has been able to count really well. An extension of that is not only are you going to be able to count well, it's making decisions at certain times during the game that will put you in really good positions to finish the leg by completing shots that you have also done in practice. What am I talking about? If you can leave 80 rather than 81, why should you do so? Because 80s is on 20s the whole time. In theory, single 20, double tops. Okay, this is a very familiar pattern. You're going for 20s all the time. Generally speaking, the best combos will involve quite common numbers. Now, the fact that you use 20s and 19s all the time is not a surprise because they are the highest numbers. And if you're hitting the highest numbers because you're coming down in darts, right, you're trying to hit 0, hitting those high numbers will then get you into these certain zones where you start to make these decisions. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, zones, what's he talking about with the zones? I'm going to get into it. Let's start with our most fundamental zone, and that is 40 and under. We'll talk about the bullseye a little bit later on, but the vast majority of legs will obviously finish when the score is 40 and under. If you get a score that's 55 and you finish, that's called a combination finish. We will also talk about that in a little bit later. But if we're just talking about the most fundamental finish, if you have an even number score under 40, you can go out. Okay, because once it gets under 40, why is 40 a threshold? Is because 20 is the highest number on the board and double 20 is 40. So as soon as you're going down 40, 38, 36, 34, 32, etc., all the way down to 2, all of those even numbers have a double on the outer ring that if you hit and you're on that score, you win that leg. Now, we talked a little bit before about the layout of the board. That's fine when you're on an even, but what do you do if you're on an odd? For example, 39, 37, 35, etc. This is when you use your knowledge of where the odd numbers are, or depending on your skill level, you're judging, do I need a multi-section target? We talked about the 4 odds at the bottom, or the 3 pairs of even numbers that are scattered around the board. Do you need to hit a certain one of those, or do you feel confident enough in hitting an even or an odd that is surrounded by the opposite type? What am I talking about? 14 is surrounded by odds. Okay, 9 is an odd, surrounded by evens. 12 is an even, surrounded by odds, etc. That surrounding by different numbers is probably the most common setup on the dartboard. Again, it's part of this risk reward. It's not a coincidence that 20 and 19 are surrounded by low numbers, right? It's getting that risk and reward. Yes, you get the reward by hitting 20 or treble 20, which is lots and lots of points. If you are slightly off, you hit 1, which apart from missing the board or bouncing out is the worst score on the dartboard. Okay, so that's your, I guess, 2 to 40. If you're on 0, it means that you win, and you can't be on 1 because that's bust. So if your score is between 2 and 40, you're either on a double straight away, which has a value on the outside, if it's 26 or 28 or 30, whatever it is, or if you're on an odd number, you just need 1 odd. You need to take an odd away from an odd to have an even. So say you're on 35, you hit single 3, you're on 32, and you can hit double 16, which is 32. Okay, so what is the next zone? What is the next threshold? And that is 40 to 60, or say 41 to 60. Okay, this means, why is it 60? Because that is double tops, which is 40, which is the highest value on the double ring, on the outer ring, plus one single of the highest number, which again is 20. So the highest value double on the outer ring is 40, double 20, and the highest value single for the numbers is 20. So 40 plus 20 is 60. So if you're in this 41 to 60 zone, you only need one dart in the right place to get yourself onto a good double. So this will always come with choice, by the way. Once you're down on this sort of low number, there are different ways to do things. So if you're on 41, you have a choice. If you like double tops, you would hit single 1 for double tops. If you like double 16, this guy, single 9 for double 16 is 41. Now, if you have watched that other video and your range, you need the pizza, you need this big slice of pizza. If you're on 41 and you're not sure about hitting a number that's surrounded by a value that you don't want, hit that pizza zone. You don't want 57 on 41, okay, that's true. So some of these will take you out, but this big chunk here and this big chunk, you'd actually be a little bit unlucky if you did hit a treble whilst going for that section. If you hit anywhere in that, you're going to be on a double and you've got a chance to win the leg, and that's a good thing. Okay, knowing your range, knowing your skill level and knowing your cluster is really, really important. Okay, so that's 41 to 60. So what happens is you often get to a number between 41 and 60 with 2 darts left. Okay, so if you're on 57 with 2 darts, you've still got a chance to have a shot at the outer ring. Why am I saying the outer ring? Yes, the bullseye is a double, but it is roughly, I think it depends on the board, it's 3.5 times, maybe even 4 times on some boards, smaller than a double. Okay, it's just smaller, and that makes it harder to hit. Yes, it is in the middle and all the lines go in, and that helps you focus. That's kind of why they're there. But generally speaking, if you can go for the outer ring, go for the outer ring. So if you're on 57, you've got 2 darts. If you want to be a cheeky monkey, you can go 7 for the bullseye. But if you want to play the odds, the probability game, you hit big 17 for double tops. Okay, so that's your 41 to 60 zone. If you are playing a lot of round the board as a beginner, that's really, really good. You will know where these numbers are. I say in a lot of these videos, maintaining rhythm and not using your mental energy to calculate things, and they just come into your head straight away, and you've got the muscle memory to hit 17 and tops, to hit 15 and tops, to hit 12 and tops, whatever it is. This can help you if you stay in a more rhythmic zone, and this is why we practice these things. I should also say, if you are practicing, instead of only practicing double tops, for example, practice high 50s, right? Practice 55s, practice 56s, practice 57s. It's getting this pattern, boom, boom, boom. And then sometimes you'll come inside on double tops, and then you're hitting double 10. And those 3 darts will start to feel very, very comfortable. You're on 55, single 15, single 20, double 10. And you might miss a bunch. You might miss a bunch of a bunch. But if you keep playing, you'll start hitting them more often. You'll start hitting them in games, and then you'll be like, oh, boom, 55. I feel now I'm much more likely to take it out than not take it out, and that's a good position to be in. All right, so that's the 41 to 60 zone. There is a little special mini zone that comes, the next big zone is 61 to 80. That's when you're talking about single to double. But there's a little mini zone between that, and that is 61 to 65. And this is utilizing the bullseye. Okay, so yes, this is 20, that's a big single, but the green ball is worth 25. And this can be a very, very useful resource when trying to get down to a particular zone or trying to give yourself more opportunities on the outer ring, which will give you a greater chance to win the leg. What am I talking about? You'll often see when players are on 65, they'll go for the bullseye. Why do they go for the bullseye? Because hitting the ball is hard. They miss, most times they go for it. But hitting the green, even though it's really just almost in the same place, is much, much easier. And when you hit that 25 from 65, it means you're on tops, and it means you've got 2 darts for tops. Now, I will say there's arguments because the players are so good, and even I do it sometimes. If you hit the bullseye, that's 50 and you're on 15 and you're mucking about with a single to a double, okay? That is not ideal, that is true. But I would say, generally speaking, if you're talking about a long enough timeline, that's a pretty decent option. That's what I would say anyway. So what your scores from 61 to 62, 63, 64, these can be a jump from not a single. So if the 60 is the final single that gets you to the outer ball, those 61s won't do it with a single of a number. Okay, so if you're on 61 and you hit 20, you're on 41, not a finish. If you're on 62 and you hit 20, you're on 42, not a finish. However, if you hit the 25 when you're on 61, which is what a lot of players do, if they're on 61, they will start on the bullseye, it leaves you on 36, because just those 5 extra points take you into the finishing zone, which is 40 and under. So a good player who is able to hit the ball, I should say, just as an aside point, by the way, if you are a beginner player, practice the ball a lot. You will win more bull-offs. So in a short game, maybe even a best of 3, best of 5, you will go first in more legs than you go second. Advantage. If you can start picking off some balls to leave yourself 2 chances on a double, you'll start winning more legs. It's just a great tool to have in the bag. I know a lot of players, they've been playing for ages, they just have never felt comfortable on the ball. They don't know how to utilize the ball to get into these zones, and as a result, they're not in advantageous positions as often as someone who is. So being able to hit the ball, understanding when to hit the ball, what kind of situations to hit the ball, is a tool that every player should have. I recommend you starting early doors if you're not a bullseye hitter. I mean, if you've been playing and you're not a bullseye hitter, start now. And if you're a beginner, start from the very, very beginning. Be fluent at hitting the ball, be confident of hitting the ball. There's all sorts of situations where hitting the ball will sort you out. Where are we? So that's mid-60s. Now, the bigger zone within that, I guess there's also 61 to 70. So if you've started, say, on 87, well, 87 is a bit of a weird one because well, actually it's not that weird. So if the zone is 61 to 70, this is also a single to ball zone. Okay? Now, we were talking about if you're on in the 50s, that can get you to 40, so you would never choose to hit the bullseye from the mid-50s because you can hit 15s and 16s. When you add 10 to that, you've gone up into a different zone, but it's still not over. So if you say you're on 87 and you go for 51, which leaves you 36, that's sort of the normal way to do it. There's other ways to do it. Luke Littler, for example, loves double 15. He'll go 57-30. That's his style. Don't really try and copy him. He's far too good. But getting onto that 70, that is the high point for a single to a double. And this double in this case is the bullseye. That's the highest double. So understanding that utility of 70, 69, 68, 67, these kinds of numbers, because they're not 65. If you've got 65 and between 61 and 65 with 2, yes, you can hit a single to go for the ball if you want. If you fancy taking a bit more of a risk or you don't need to go for the ball, then you can start hitting singles to double. That's your choice. But if you're on 66 to 70, for example, the bullseye doesn't help you. So that is the opportunity that you have a single then to hit the ball. Okay, so you're still very, very much in the game. If you're under 70 and you've got 2 darts left, if you throw straight, you know where your numbers are, you've got a chance to win the game on the bullseye. Or, well, depends. You can gamble, recommend against gambling. So if you start, say you've got 3 darts and you're on 67, how do you go? Okay, most of you who know how to count are going to say to me, treble 17, double 8. Okay, treble 17 is 51, double 8 is 16, 51 and 16 is 67. Okay, that's an experienced counter. As a less experienced player, you'll be like, oh my God, how am I going to know this? Well, most dartboards have that little card. Okay, now don't necessarily worry about your 167s and your 164s. Even for the top players, they're quite unusual finishes. You need to worry about the 4, maybe it doesn't even give you 40 and under, but it will give you that 40 to sort of 80 sort of range on those cards. As a more experienced player, you might end up saying that particular route doesn't play to my strengths, but that's experience that will teach you that. If you're completely new to the game, you're like, how on earth do I take out, what did I say, 67? I don't know what the card would say. I imagine it would say treble 17, often abbreviated as capital T plus a D8, right? And that's 51 and 16 is 67. So those little cards initially, they might come on the back of your dartboard, or there's a little leaflet that will have all the numbers. It's worth, if you've got a minute and you think this is important, and I think it is, just have a little leaf through so you become familiar with the numbers. As I've mentioned in other videos, keeping up that rhythm and having that stuff just click into your mind without thinking at all is a great advantage on someone who is stopping, looking at the scoreboard, asking a friend, starting to slightly panic a little under the pressure and people watching, and maybe they get tense, throw a poor dart, maybe they throw a dart at completely the wrong place. So this is why I think it's important. All right, so that's up to 70, 61 to 70, and then as an extension, 61 to 80 with 3, that's your starting score. At a very minimum, 80 is the highest number you can get to a double on the outer ring with your last dart just by hitting singles. Again, because 20 is the most important one, that's why these things are always multiples of 20. So if you're on 80 and you hit 2 single 20s, that leaves you 40 with your last one. That's a good finish. Okay, as soon as you go even just 1 point higher than that, 81 is much, much, much more tricky, and it needs 2 special zones to get you the win. Okay, because a single leaves you on something like 62. You'll then, I guess maybe 1 single zone, but that zone would be the bullseye, which I count as a special zone. When I say special zone, I'm either talking about a treble or a bullseye, sometimes a double, but certainly not a single. Singles being much, much bigger and much, much easier to hit. Okay, so 61 to 80 with 3, you're getting singles down. So 79, for example, how do I go with 79? If it ends in 9, you're going to need to hit a number with a 9, most likely, right? So you're going to go for single 19. If you hit the treble 19, 57, you're on double 11, which sounds a little bit crazy. I think it's quite a good double. I like the up and down of doubles. But if you hit the single, and this is what a lot of combinations do, they don't think about the hits, they think about the misses. That gets you onto 60. And as we've talked about before, if you have 2 darts, that's right in that 2 dart zone of being able to get a single and get a double on the outer ring. Okay, so 79, single 19, single 20, double tops, job done. Okay, 78, you're going to start on 18. So yes, you do want the treble because that gives you 2 chances at the end. 54 leaves 24, double 12. However, a single leaves you on 60. Again, top zone of getting a single to a double on the outer zone. So these kinds of patterns, you can practice these all day. I would strongly suggest working it into your practice routine if you do practice, rather than just throwing a single a treble or trying to score all day, or even a single double. Like, oh, I'm going to get better at double 18 today. That's great, but you'll only be on double 18 36 probably after a miss or some sort of setup in a real game. It's much more likely you're going to get onto 36 if your starting score was 76. Okay, so on 76, treble 20 leaves you double 8. A miss leaves you on 56. And as soon as you're within that under 60 range, you know, I've got a single to a double. Okay, and practicing these sort of 56s or 76s, I believe, is much more realistic. It's much more of a sort of match practice style practice, rather than just throwing 3 double 18, walking around getting them out 3 at double 18. Yes, sometimes you get handfuls of dart at a single double. Most likely your first effort at the outer ring will be some sort of combination, and that will be a combination of a treble and a single, or a single and a single, or something like that, and then hitting the double on the outer ring with the third dart. So I recommend practicing those higher finishes, 41 to 80. There's lots of practice games. You know, you've probably got an app that will have something, those sorts of games if you don't like counting. It's also a good team building game. You know, when you take out the finish in 6 darts, you add numbers and things like that. So you probably know lots more of these than games than me. I usually play by myself, so I don't have the option to play with other people. But when I am practicing, I do think about these things. So I'm going to try and put timestamps on this video, by the way. I don't really know how to do that. And I'm going to be talking about the different zones and separating the different zones. So there's going to be another little separate zone that uses the 25. So we've just finished 61 to 80. These are 2 singles that lead to a double on the outer ring. Nice life. Okay, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85. Hopefully you know what I'm going to say. Yes, they can utilize the outer ring, depending on what you're doing. Now, because you can't finish on a treble, if you're on 85 and you've got 2 left, hitting the 25 leaves you on 60, which isn't really much use. You can finish on a treble on some of these electronic games, but if you're playing hardboard, steel tip, which I'm assuming you are, you can't finish on a double. So why am I saying this? This is a really useful zone if you want to get to 60 and under for your next turn. Okay, so say you're on 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, and you've got 1 dart left. You can start thinking, oh, yes, I'm on 85. I could try and hit 57, which would leave me 28, double 14. And next time I came to the board, if I hit that treble, I would have 3 at the outer ring. That would be a perfect scenario. However, doubles are tricky to hit. You might not have hit a treble the whole game. Maybe you've just hit a couple, or you're not playing so well. Play the percentages, help yourself out. And this is why knowing these numbers is really, really important. So you can think to yourself, I'm on 85, I've got 1 dart left. If I hit the bullseye, I'm on 60. I'm coming back to the board with 60, which hopefully is a classic combo you practice, is single 20, double tops. Okay, single 20 and 2 darts are double tops. So you can hit the single, you can completely miss, you're still in the game, and you can throw your third one because your score started on 60 or less, which is single to the outer ring, as we talked about in that 41 to 60 zone. Similarly, if you're on 84, you hit 25, you're on 59. You'll come back to the board, single 19, double tops. You're on 83, you'll be on 58, 18's top. 82, boom, boom, boom. And so the numbers keep going together like that. It's part of that 82 combo. You'll often see the same style actually when players have 82 with 3. They'll go for the bullseye first, Why? Because it makes a lot of sense. Yes, a make is brilliant and it looks really, really good. When you hit the red ball, you're on double 16 and you have 2 shots on double 16. That's a perfect scenario. Okay, the point is not necessarily the makes, the likelihood is the miss. Why do they go for the bullseye? Because hitting that 25 gets you to 57, that gets you under that 60 threshold. So it's a simple single, like almost a no stress dart. You do have to concentrate. I'm not saying don't concentrate, but it should be a pretty straightforward single. And then you can put all your energy towards using that third dart at double tops on the outer ring. And that's why they do that. When you're on 82 and say you go a more traditional 42-40 or something like that, treble 14 for double top. If you hit the 42, great, but these combinations are not about the makes, they're about the misses. I can't say that enough. If you hit that single 14, you're on 68. Now 68 with 2 is not the worst in the world because you're under 70. And as we've already discussed earlier in this video, if you've got 2 darts and you're under 70, you've got a single to the bullseye. Okay, so that's, you're going to be almost definitely, if your opponent's anywhere close to finishing and you're on 68 with 2, you're going to go 18 for the bull. But that flexibility on those mid-80s finishes that puts you into a better zone for the next time is a very, very good tool. You'll often see it. I really, really like it on things like 161. This is a little bit more advanced. So 161 is a difficult finish. What's more likely is that you hit 420s. So with your first 2 darts, you'll hit a combination of a single and a treble 20 and score 80. And this leaves you on 81 with 1. Now, a lot of players will back themselves and try and go for treble 19, treble 17, something like that. If you want to play the percentages, in my humble opinion, if you then hit that bullseye with your third dart, if you hit the 50, you're on 31. It's an odd number, it's a prime number even, it's like the most useless darts number, but that's a simple single to 2 on the outer ring, so that's not bad at all. And if you do hit the green ball, you're on 50, you're on 56, which choice for me personally, big 16 double tops. Other player will hit single 20 for double 18. The point is it's a single, which when you're setting up a shot is the easiest shot you can get to get yourself onto a double is hitting a big single, and it gives you 2 chances. If you left yourself, say you're on 81 and you do try to hit the 19s and you're left on 62, you're above that 60 threshold and you're having to hit special points of the board to go out. You're looking at things like treble 20 to leave you 2 chances on double 16 rather than having a single which then leaves you 2 chances at double 16. Loads of people leave 62 and take it out. I'm not saying it's not take outable. I'm saying you're much, much more likely to take out 56 than you are 62. And the dart should really be the same. I mean, we've talked about how small the bull is, and that's true, but once you've added the area of the green, like that's a proper chunk. That's a proper chunk, and it's right in the middle of the board. It's kind of its own throw, so you should feel really nice and comfortable, and you should be able to say to yourself, I say should, whatever, this might not happen right at the beginning. As I'm going to reiterate something I said before, if you are just starting out and playing, be proficient at hitting the bullseye. You can always improve at hitting the bullseye. There's loads of fun games that you can use the bullseye for practice, but it is such a good tool. Okay. One final zone, I'm going to maybe have to split this into a bunch of videos, is 90 and under. Okay, let's call it 90, 50 to 90, I suppose. So 90 is the highest number that you can hit 2 singles and leave yourself with a double, in this case the bullseye. All right, why 90? Because that's a single 20 highest single on the board. Single 20, highest single on the board, which is 40, and then take that away from 90, and that leaves you 50. Okay, if you're on 89, your little card, if you're unfamiliar with your finishes, if you are familiar with your finishes, you'll know that 89 is almost definitely 57 and 32. If you do hit the single, you're on 70, okay, and that is the highest single to double, which is the ball. So that's single 20 bullseye. If you're on 88, you do have a choice, depending what the other guy is on. And here's a subtlety actually. So 88 for me, I like 16s and I like tops. All right, so treble 16 is 48 and double tops is 40. 48 and 40 is 88. Okay, that's a nice way to go. However, there's a huge difference between going for 16s first and going for 20s first. What is that difference? Hopefully, if you've been watching this video and I'm making any sort of sense whatsoever, the crucial difference between hitting the 20 instead of the 16 is that if you do hit the 20 and you don't hit the treble, which will happen a lot, you get below 70 and you've got 2 darts in your hand. All right, you'll be on 68. And as soon as you're under 70 and you've got 2 darts, you've got a single to the bullseye. And that's a big difference, because if you hit the single from the 16s, that leaves you 72 from 88, and you're looking at special zones to have to finish that shot. Okay, 2 double 18s, for example, not only 1 double, you're trying to hit 2 in the same turn. Difficult shot. The very best players will back themselves doing that. If you're just starting out, I would not recommend that at all. I would recommend the 20 route, so you've got a big single to the bullseye, and I think that'll give you a much better chance. But just knowing those little foibles of the numbers and the foibles of the board can put you in a different position, essentially. If your opponent is on 257, go the 16s route. The 16s is good because 3 single 16s leave your tops. Okay, so if you do hit that single and you're on 72, you can either go for the treble again or just hit 2 single 16s and you're coming back to the board with 40 and 3 darts in your hand. That's nice. Okay, if however your opponent is on 60 and you're on 88, I highly recommend you go for the 20s route, and you're guaranteeing yourself by being able to hit big numbers and having that chance at the bullseye. So that's our final zone, is 90. Anything above 90, we're going to talk about it in another video, needs a little bit more work and a little bit more knowledge of the numbers. But I'm hoping, if you've managed to watch the whole video, I really appreciate it. 40 and under is its obvious zone. 41 to 60, understanding the value of the 25 for those early to mid 60s. 41 to 60 is another zone. 61 to 80, and then those early 80s also utilizing the bullseye in a slightly different way, and then all the way up to 90, which is single to a double. Okay, and understanding those zones and knowing where you're at in the zones and knowing how many darts you've got in your hand on a certain number, whilst also being aware, I'm not saying look at your opponent's score all the time, I recommend that you don't, but sometimes if your opponent is able, making a decision when you're on a certain number, especially in the 88 style situation we have talked about, can be the difference between having a chance to win the leg and maybe winning the leg, or not having a chance and your opponent steals it, which is annoying. You know, you want to win every game. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Learn your zones, learn your outs, be proficient at the bullseye. You'll win a ton of games. Okay, thanks for watching. My name's Alex Mack. This is Last Dart TV. I'll see you next time.